I live in the town of Mount Horeb, Wisconsin. We're in the southwest part of the state, very pretty area, lots of hills, lots of streams, lots of forests. I really like it here, which is why I've been here probably for so long, longer than I've been anywhere else, probably around 24 years. In any case, I do a lot of walking around the town here, and as I do, I engage various individuals, start chit-chatting with them, whatever. And many times it comes up in the conversation that where I say I'm a Christian, I go over here to this church here called Life Church. And they're, as part of the conversation, they'll usually say something like, well, I'm not religious at all, but I do consider myself very spiritual. And that type of rejoinder occurs often here in this town because we have a lot of pagan influence here in Mount Horeb. We have Circle Sanctuary just 8 miles to the west, which is a pagan community. And so we have a lot of, like I said, pagan/Wiccan influence. So that's probably why I get this answer to, or this statement in part of our conversation. So, and I don't doubt that they are, I do believe them. I don't doubt that they're spiritual. I believe that they are very spiritual. They don't follow the same spirit that I follow. I follow the Spirit of Christ. They make it clear when they say I'm not religious, but that they're spiritual. What they mean by that is, I have nothing to do with Christ, but I have plenty to do with these spirits. And like I said, I do believe that many of the spirits, not all of them, some of them are phony spirits, but many of them are real. So I take them at their word. And as I was thinking about this the other day, I realized that there was a similar influence in another town around the turn of the around the time of Christ, town called Colossae, town of about 25,000 people at that time. It's very small today, but at that time it was significant, 25,000 people. Now that may not sound a lot to you, but to put it in perspective, the town of Athens, the city of Athens, only had about 50,000. So that was a preeminent town in the world at that time. So it was not an insignificant city, this city of Colossae. And in that city, many of these people worshipped various, I don't know what to call them, spirits. Let's just call them spirits. They call them angels, but not like angels that we think of today. They called them spirits that were behind the sun, the moon, the stars, the earth, the spirit of the wood, the spirit of the sea, the spirit of whatever. That there were spirits behind these things that should be worshipped. And in worshiping them, you would kind of placate them. And when the teachings of Jesus came into this milieu, so to speak, they looked at this as Jesus is just another semi-god, kind of a demigod, just like all these other spirits. They put him on equal footing, which is a very similar mindset to what we have today in where I live and maybe where you live as well. The same spirit of, I know who Jesus is, but he's really no different than any of these other spirits. He's just semi-divine or whatever you want to call it. But there was a letter that Paul wrote to this city, St. Paul of the Bible, who was a convert to Christianity from Judaism. And I thought he put it very succinctly, saying that here is the difference between Jesus, the Spirit of Christ, and these folks, these spirits that you believe in. And he starts off, I'll read from chapter 1, verse 15. I'm not going to read the whole thing because nobody wants somebody to read to them, but I'm going to read a little bit. It says, He, Jesus, is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. That means the spirits too. Whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all the governments. All things were created by him and for him. He is before all things, meaning he existed before everything, and in him all things hold together. And it's that last, well, the whole thing gets me. It's a great summary of who Jesus is. But I like this verse, in him all things hold together. In other words, without him, he seems to be saying everything would just fly apart. Nothing would exist. And there's this concept called the fine-tuning of the universe. It's been promoted by many scientists, but in essence, what it says is there are certain forces of nature or certain constants of nature that if these were just a little bit off, no life would exist on the planet or in the universe for that matter. Some of these constants of nature would be things like the force of gravity or the mass of a proton, the charge of an electron, and there's about 22 more of these things. I think there's like 25 altogether, where these constants of nature, if they were just a little bit off numerically, no life anywhere would exist on the planet. And no life anywhere would exist in the universe. In other words, they're pretty important numbers. It used to be a long time ago that they thought, well, they could be a shade off here or a shade off here, and we'd be fine. Well, that was determined not to really be the case. So I believe that at the time where God created the universe through Jesus, that Jesus knew exactly what these numbers had to be and had to peg them to a very finite number, and he did. And you can look up more on this discussion. I find it fascinating. Look up The Fine-Tuning of the Universe and William Lane Craig. He has a good discussion of this topic, and I think he's got a number of writings, but just look that up. Just Google William Lane Craig, The Fine-Tuning of the Universe, for further discussion on this. In any case, back to the letter, Paul was just trying to set everybody straight, saying, yes, there are many spirits, but there's one spirit, there is one entity that is preeminent, and he created all the other spirits, and he created everything else besides. And that person by whom all things were created is Jesus Christ. And he is the one worthy of your worship.